that I owe Paul $1,000. Well, that's basically an entry in a ledger system that cannot be changed. And the reason it cannot be changed is because you start by creating the first block in the blockchain, and that block, the name of that block and the contents of that block are encoded with what's called a hash. And the hash is nothing more than a number. And I'll try to give you an example of what that means. If inside of this block I have the equation A plus B equals C, the hash for that equation might be 1, 2, 3, 4. If I change it to say A plus B equals D, instead of the hash for that being 1, 2, 3, 4, it might be 7, 8, 9, 10, or 7, 8, 9, 1. So if I change anything in block A, the name for block B, which is dependent upon the hash for block A, gets changed. So as you start adding these ledger-based transactions that indicate what has happened previously, if you change anything in a previous block, it breaks the chain and all of the chain becomes invalidated. So the way this works essentially is you can trust the absolute integrity of the information that's in the blockchain to not be changed, because it cannot be changed without breaking the chain. Now, I could go through a more detailed explanation of that, but let me just suffice it to say that if you really want to see that, you can actually, how that is done, you can actually go to YouTube and simply Google Ivan on Tech, or just Google blockchain encryption, and there's a lot of people that have created videos that are programmers that explain in pretty simple detail how the blockchain works to protect the integrity of the information. But from my perspective, again, if you think of each block on the chain as being a boxcar on a train, whereas boxcars can be unhinged and put with other trains, this isn't the case with the blockchain. Once you create the train, it never ever becomes disassembled. And so what happens is you always add new blocks to the blockchain, and those new blocks carry sort of new historical information. And people that are using the blockchain to trade ledger-based information, IOUs, you can think of it, they trust the information in the blockchain. And the word trust is really critical and central to the concept of why the cryptocurrencies work. Because just like you trust that the United States will somehow make your dollar tradable and worth something, then you're trusting that the integrity of the blockchain will make it possible for you to absolutely prove up that that person owes you something. Now, let's don't get caught up in the moment of like, okay, now how do I go force them to pay me and that sort of thing. That's all built into it, and that's a sort of another layer of complexity that I don't know that we really need to try to delve into at the moment. But from a conceptual perspective, if you think it's blocks on the blockchain as boxcars on a train, that to me is a good visual representation. Now, yes ma'am?
On the mining part of it, are you going to go with how you miners?
I don't have any slides on that, but I can talk a little bit about that. So the question is how do people make money as miners? Okay, so miners use these devices called, they're specialized computers. They have chips that are built specifically for solving encryption problems, and they're just highly math-intensive problems. And the encryption problem that they solve is what creates the block in the blockchain. And so it takes a lot of computing power, it takes a lot of electricity, it takes a certain amount of time to add a new block to a blockchain. Now there's lots of different blockchains out there, but it doesn't matter which blockchain it is. To add new blocks to the blockchain requires a lot of computational time and power, both electrical power and computing power. And so because these things are not easily created, they're also not easily torn apart and hacked into. And so creating these buckets of information where you store your ledger data on the blockchain, that's what a miner does. And it takes time, and because a miner has to basically, your laptop is not powerful enough to make a block on the Bitcoin blockchain. 5 years ago when Bitcoin first came out, people with laptops had enough power to be able to create blocks on the blockchain. But the more people that there were that started creating the blocks, the people that managed the blockchain for Bitcoin made the solution difficulty level increase. And as the solution difficulty level increased, it slowed down the creation of the number of blocks. And by doing so, that made them more rare and made them more valuable, which in part drove the cost of the Bitcoin up. This is delving into a layer that I don't know that everybody really will ever need to get into, but to get a specialized machine, a mining machine, which is just a computer, you're typically looking at $3,000 to $5,000. Some of them will be a little bit more. And the more you spend, the faster it works, and the faster it can unlock a Bitcoin.
We actually bought it.
Did you?
Yeah, to get more money.
Yeah, he's involved in the game.
So, that was another way of making money.
But did you find that it takes longer and longer to mine the Bitcoin as you
Yeah,
over time?
so he came up with a lot of different, a lot of stuff came up when we got the mine, but it did take a while. I think he bought it when it was the scarce of it, to get the mine, and it kind of like, it's very volatile.
So Bitcoin mining machines typically burn so much electricity and create so much heat and take so long to create a Bitcoin that it's usually only worth being a Bitcoin miner if you have a really cheap source of electricity and you can do it in scale, because it's not the kind of thing that the average person can really do and generate a big return on investment. Now, how much of a return on investment you're going to get if you have a mining machine depends in part on the dollar value of the currency. And when Bitcoin a month and a half ago was $20,000 a coin, it might have been very valuable. Now it's dropped down significantly, and as it comes down, it becomes less profitable. But there is a balance to that. So you can go look for an ASIC, an ASIC machine. That stands for Application Specific Integrated Circuit. So these are computers that have chips that have been built specifically for solving cryptologically complex algorithms. And they burn lots of electricity, they create lots of heat, they're not your average computer, and they really only have one purpose, and that is to mine for some sort of a coin, whether it's a Bitcoin or some other coin.
My son's who's a big gamer, they already have these huge machines that are doing that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it's like, okay, fine, we'll just add it on we're already doing, and then they're actually changing the stuff virtually.
Well, and there's lots of different solutions, but the video driver, which is a highly math complex card, is as close as a typical computer will get to the ASIC type of machine programming. So that's why people with powerful video gaming machines will sometimes use them in the evenings to mine for Bitcoin. But they're also typically pretty expensive machines. So think of the Bitcoin as an underlying sort of a technology concept. There are lots of different, think of blockchain as the underlying technology concept. There's actually quite a few different, I don't know how many, but there's dozens, if not hundreds, of actual technological blockchains. So there's not just one blockchain. You can create blockchains out of lots of different types of underlying code base sets. But the blockchain concept, on top of it, you'll have coins. Bitcoin is a blockchain. Ethereum is a blockchain, Neo is a blockchain. There's lots of different blockchains out there. Now,
so each coin will have one blockchain?
Each block will have one coin associated with it. All blockchain blocks have coins associated with them by the nature of what they are. But you don't necessarily have to use the coin or use the block as a way of trading monetary assets. There's other uses which I'm going to get to. But on top of some of these, you can build things called tokens. So Bitcoin does not allow anybody to build anything on top of the block. The blockchain for Bitcoin is devoted to one thing and one thing only, and that is trading the Bitcoin. That's it. That's all the Bitcoin blockchain is used for. But that's not the only thing that blockchains could be used for. The Ethereum blockchain, which is arguably the next largest blockchain technology out there, has what's called the ability to create smart contracts. And smart contracts are basically just something like, if Paul gives me 10 coins, I give one coin automatically to Don, and another coin to Todd, and another coin to, Janet, and then, so I only end up with